Talk Money.
Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of Let's Talk Money with me, Surabhi Upadhyay. Now, if you track mutual fund headlines, you would have known that thematic funds are suddenly becoming very, very popular. There are lots of new fund offerings that are happening on this thematic instrument side. And in terms of the number of funds being launched and the money being collected, those numbers are really ballooning as well. In fact, if you look at data, industry-wide data over the past couple of months, then thematic funds as a category are pulling in anywhere between 10,000 crores to 15 to 16,000 crores on a monthly basis. So these funds are definitely becoming popular, but are they really worth your while? That is what we're going to discuss on the show today. And to help us wrap our heads around this subject, we have with us Feroze Azeez of Anand Rathi Private Wealth and Ruchit Mehta, Head of Research at SBI Mutual Fund. Gentlemen, great to have both of you with me in the studios. Thank you so much for coming through. Now, as someone who also maps that monthly mutual fund data, I know that every month when we look at the numbers and we look at the net equity inflow number, a large chunk of that is coming via thematic funds, right? And we're seeing funds in all kinds of categories. It could be defense, it could be manufacturing, it could be business cycle, it could be innovation. So we want to start by understanding what is behind this phenomena and how should we look at it as investors. So opening thoughts, Feroze.
Yes, Surabhi, you rightly have observed because you collect the data as microscopically as possible on a monthly basis. So it's obvious that you have got this trend absolutely right. If you have to try to infer why this happens, I would say there are two reasons. One is there is a limitation of how many diversified funds one AMC can launch. Then once you've already put all your bouquet in place and you actually want to bring in two, three more flowers into your bouquet and there's hardly any place, then thematic is a fallback option for an asset management company. But can't be said this as true for all asset management companies. Some asset management companies are using this as a great opportunity to create value. Because the theme identification is best done by the fund manager and research. You have a head of research, right? They are able to identify the themes much better than you and, not you, me and investors. That's a better thing to say. So when you're launching a theme and you're collecting new money at that point in time, that's a message that this is the theme which is good at this point in time. So I would always look at thematic schemes as coming from very credible AMCs as a great identification of a theme which is going to have a run. Now let's assume. If you look at HDFC, it's the second largest AMCs. Of course, SBI is the largest AMC. They launched a defense fund at the right time. And that became the 83% return over the last 1 year. And they also...
83% return, 1-year return on the HDFC defense fund.
Defense fund.
Timing. It's all about timing, right?
Yeah. The timing not coming into equity, timing of the theme. And why I respect this fund a little more is they stopped accepting money too at a point in time. That's why.
So right now, they're not accepting money.
In lump sum, they're not.
Okay, I think that's bringing me straight away to the next set of questions. And there's so many that, while it's very natural to want to invest into a particular theme, what are the do's and don'ts around it? What should we bear in mind? And Ruchit, comment on this. I mean, the fact that some of these funds are being launched because, like Feroze mentioned, that, this is the only place where an asset manager can really innovate and come out with new offerings. While that's one, as investors, I think we want to be in thematic funds where there's a real case of, real merit, a real long-term story that's yet to play out. So how should we approach it?
So firstly, I think it's important that the investor looks at the individual theme and understands what are the business prospects of the theme, right? Because not every theme or every sector will do well at all points in time, right? Then it just makes a case for diversified funds. The idea is to say that, okay, at this point in time, if the particular sector looks attractive, like, when we launched our energy opportunities funds earlier part of this year, it was something for us to say that, look, this is a sector or this is a theme that we think is quite interesting at this point in time because valuations are in your favor, earnings growth is looking to be pretty attractive, relatively under-owned as a sector. So this is a right time to probably get into that theme itself. So one will have to spend time to research the theme. Now, a good place to understand whether a theme is interesting or attractive is to say that you take some of the maybe the top AMCs, look at the frontline diversified funds and see what are they overweighting or underweighting, right? So if generally you're seeing that some of the good fund managers in, let's say, large cap or larger mid cap funds are overweighting, hypothetically, let's say, the automotive sector, then it seems that there is improved business prospects for the automotive sector. So that could be another way to kind of, say, select a particular theme. And lastly, I think, always speak to an advisor. I think, your advisors will always be able to guide you better because they in turn do speak a lot more to the AMCs directly. They do interact with fund managers. People like them will always be able to give you better insights into what is a particular theme to look at this point in time. So those are the broad 3 areas I would say when choosing a thematic fund.
Oh, fair point, absolutely. And since I think selecting the theme is such an important part of the whole decision of getting into a thematic fund, let's spend some more time on this. And Feroze, here the risk is real, right? Because when sectors are hot or are in demand, PSUs, you mentioned defense, it could be manufacturing, it could be, tomorrow it could be EV. So a lot of times, styles and themes become sort of in vogue and become really hot. And that's when we do see a lot of funds come in. So how do you sort of guard against, while you don't want to miss the bus, but you don't want to be behind the curve, you don't want to get burnt also, but you want the upside. So how do we navigate it?
See, one thing very contrary to what I say when it comes to normal open-ended fund investing, saying never buy an IPO or an NFO in this case, right? For earlier, they used to be called IPOs. New fund offers, you never buy a new fund offer for a diversified large cap scheme or a mid cap scheme or even a small cap scheme. So point one I'm making is when you're trying to take a thematic fund, an IPO is a great message. So, or an NFO is a great time to look at that theme. Okay, don't buy open-ended thematic funds as much.
Okay.
But you can definitely, like, consumption has been a theme. Manufacturing has been a theme. If you see 3 great AMCs launching that theme, that implies that all 3 AMCs concur on that theme being undervalued today, like energy, aapne kaha, right? I don't think energy was so popular.
Yeah.
But still, SBI kind of an AMC is having the courage to launch and uses infrastructure to collect money at the right time.
Because energy is, frankly, right now in the market is not sort of a theme or a sector that's in vogue. It's not hot right now. So therefore, this one is an interesting launch. But again, I go back to the question, what about the themes which are running hard, PSU, manufacturing, and then how do you decide whether a thematic fund is right for you in these themes or not?
Basically, that's the warning signal which I'm giving to all the viewers, that if you're hearing a larger decibel on a certain theme, that's exactly the time to sell that theme more so than buy it, right? So, like energy was not as popular. Defense back then was not so popular. So that's one thing which I'm saying. An NFO from a large AMC is a good message that this is a theme. You might not have heard it as many times, but it's a great theme to actually go with NFOs in thematic category and not buy too many themes which are already existing.
Sure. Okay. So one sort of the first step is to identify the right theme. The next question to ask is how much exposure should I take to that theme? And Ruchit, what's the advice over here? How to blend such a fund into the portfolio?
I think we've always told our investors that, look, if you're going to invest into a thematic fund, one is that at a principal level, when you're buying a thematic fund, you're increasing your allocation to that theme, right? Because let's say you have a bouquet of diversified funds in a portfolio and you add, let's say, an automotive fund, right? Or an innovation fund.
Technology fund or any fund.
You're increasing your allocation to that sector or that theme. Therefore, to be more prudent, thematic funds ideally should not be more than 15-20% of your overall asset allocation, right? Okay. Within that, ideally, it's not that you buy a bunch of themes, because then you are sort of mitigating the whole purpose of buying a thematic fund. Okay, buy 1 or 2, maybe 3 at best. Okay, and by doing so, you will increase your allocation to that particular sector or theme that you want. So, let's say you put 20% into thematics, maybe buy an energy fund, maybe buy an automotive fund if you like these sectors, and buy maybe not more than 10% of your portfolio in one particular theme or thematic fund. So that's the broad.
Okay, that's an approach that could be followed. Also, Feroze, is important, right? Because like Ruchit also mentioned, sectoral funds and thematic funds. And sometimes these terms are used interchangeably. But highlight for us the small nuances, the differences between the overall category of sector funds and thematic funds, which may involve more than one sector.
Yes, actually, it's such a customized space. Even in themes, there are such diversified themes or concentrated themes. Like SBI Infrastructure is a part of my model portfolio.
Okay.
Let me illustrate it with this. SBI Infrastructure has so many sectors that I'm not too worried that it is still called a thematic scheme because it has everything other than pharma and IT. But it's still called infrastructure, right? Because financial services is infrastructure, financial infrastructure of the country. So you will have to look at, but manufacturing is a little more narrower, right? Business cycle is a little more wider. So whenever it comes to thematic, cannot be top down, it has to be bottom up. Which scheme are we speaking about?
Sure.
Now coming to your pointed question, sector is very, very narrow. Right? So if you're buying a banking and financial services sector, 90% of the money, 80% of the money is going to be in that specific sector. Now, there are 12 funds in the thematic category who have greater than 50% of their money in one sector. Now, these 12 may be as close to a sector fund than a thematic fund.
Okay.
There are 26 funds who have in their largest sector anywhere between 30 to 50%.
Okay.
So these 38 funds, I would call them as narrower themes, higher on risk.
So you would prefer to be in a more diversified thematic fund than in a very narrow fund, which is then it becomes like a sector fund.
Absolutely.
That's the approach.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. We need to take a very quick break on that note. On the other side, our viewers have also sent in some questions on thematics, and we will get to answering those queries in just a moment.
Let's talk money